Age of Empires 4 is an upcoming real-time strategy video game that is being developed by Relic Entertainment and published by Xbox Games Studios. The last base game entry was in 2015 with Age of Empires 3, but since then the IP has consistently released new content and updated definitive editions of all the previous games, and they've released these from 2018 through 2021. Looking ahead, the next entry of the series is set to be released sometime in fall of 2021. So let's break down the development timeline, civilizations shown off so far, and more. As always, all the sources will be linked in the description below, so make sure to check those out and support those original writers. And with that out of the way, let's get into everything we know about Age of Empires 4. The first mention of Age of Empires 4 was in August of 2017, and right away the project was announced from Microsoft. A cinematic trailer was shown off, and the new title was given as well. And this type of trailer is exactly what you would expect for a game that isn't set to be released until years later. It was strictly meant to announce that the game was in development and would be a partnership between Relic Entertainment and Microsoft Studios. Relic Entertainment themselves are a powerhouse of a development studio. They were founded back in 1997, and since then have become quite well known in the RTS video game genre. For a while, the studio was renamed THQ Canada, but as of 2013 was renamed back to Relic Entertainment. But throughout their 20+ years in the industry, they developed the first two homeworld games, Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War 1 and 2, along with the Company of Heroes game series. So the IP is in experienced hands with Relic. But at the time, as I said, the studio wasn't ready to talk any more about the project, and it's assumed that around this time is when the game started development, so sometime in 2017. And the studio was quiet for the rest of 2017 and all of 2018. It wasn't until an article with PC Gamer in June of 2019 that another update was given on Age of Empires 4, almost 2 years after the reveal. PC Gamer was able to interview Phil Spencer, who is Microsoft's Executive Vice President of Gaming, and the interviewer brought up Age of Empires 4 and asked if Phil could give fans any updates on the project. Phil started by saying they will talk more about the game in 2019. He expanded further and said, "The thing I would say is, we've been incredibly impressed by Relic's capability. Obviously, they're somewhat local to us being in Vancouver, and we know the studio. They did the best job of, here's what we think Age should go to. And the other thing I'll say is we are learning a lot revisiting Age 1 and Age 2. As those communities grow again, as those communities continue to exist, they have larger player bases and there's a lot of feedback. So we're really getting good insight. Even here, as we're putting Age 2 Definitive Edition, which is playable on the floor, from those communities about things they'd like to see in Age 4, and that's important for us." And this is where a lot of the headlines originated from that said Age of Empires 4 will be taking inspiration from Empires 1 and 2, which makes sense that they would want to go back to their roots and see what made these games so popular and continue to be popular and have these really long legs in this gaming world, and they want to replicate that with Empires 4. The next development update was also in 2019, like Phil Spencer said, except this time it was in November at the Xbox 19 event. Microsoft and Relic released a 1-minute Age of Empires 4 pre-alpha gameplay trailer. The team was very adamant about the game still is in pre-alpha, but they hoped that the trailer would be used to discuss and theorize about the upcoming title, and was given more so the community could have something to discuss rather than to actually show off the game and to say this is what it will be like. A few notable things to point out in the trailer is that 2 civilizations are shown, which are the English and Mongols. Also, a lot of community members were excited by the fact that archers could now be mounted on walls. IGN was able to interview Adam Isgreen around this same time, who is the creative director on the project, and he reaffirmed that the game will utilize the medieval time period with some slight changes compared to past games. He says compared to Age of Empires 2, the time period will start earlier and will go up through the Renaissance period, but the team isn't ready to talk about exact dates yet for when the game will definitively start and definitively end, but these are the rough times they can talk about now. A few additional details were given from PC Games N when they were also able to interview the creative director on the project. And Adam started by discussing the new civilizations. He said, quote, "The English will feel familiar to the Britons from Age of Empires 2, while the Mongols will be very different," with Adam implying that Age's traditional unique units and differences in tech might be among the systems revised. Adam continued on talking about resources, saying, quote, "We deviate a little, but we really love the model from Age 2. So yes, there are 4 resources in Age 4, and all the civilizations use them. But do they use them in the same way? Do they use them in the same order? Don't know, you'll have to find out." And his next statement was in regard to the number of ages within the game. He said, "We love the idea of moving through ages, and we've actually taken it even further in this game. Not in terms of the number of ages, although there are civilizations that don't necessarily play by the 4-age rule, I will say that, but there are also new aspects to aging up from a presentation point of view that no one has ever seen in an RTS game before." And this, for the most part, I think summarizes it really well, that they are starting with Age 2 or Age 1 or some of these older games as the base for what they want to create, and then they're just expanding it further, bringing in their own ideas and hoping that that feels fresh enough for fans, but a lot of it they just weren't ready to talk about yet in 2019. And that's all the news I wanted to cover around the Microsoft event, and not surprisingly, the studio remained silent for another year and all throughout 2020 until December 29th. A small update was given on the Age of Empires website, and the update included a small tidbit of information on Age of Empires 4. The studio said they are making great progress on the project, and they have been hard at work for a variety of different systems in the game, and they will have more details to share at a later date. And that was all the information in 2020, and the last big event where most of the tangible information was given about the game was in April of 2021, when there was an Age of Empires fan preview event that included information not only from Age of Empires 4, but from some of the definitive editions and other games as well. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to be covering what they were talking about in regards to Age of Empires 4. So to start, 2 new civilizations were shown off, including the Delhi Sultanate. A 50-second trailer was released for this new civilization, which showed off a few elements fans can expect with this civilization, including elephants, some of their buildings, and their units. The other new civilization is the Chinese, which followed the same format as the Delhi Sultanate. It also is important to note that these trailers are now captured using the in-game engine rather than the pre-alpha marking that was in gameplay prior to this, so you can see how much it's progressed and how much further they have made it in development. Another aspect of the game the studio was ready to talk about at this event was the Norman campaign, which starts in 1066 with a battle for the English throne. The studio has said the game will have 4 playable campaigns, and more details will be shared as they near release. But the team also said they're changing how the stories will be told and want the stories to be told more in a documentary-like style, with live action footage from the actual battlefields and narration all intertwined while playing to show that a lot of this was real and it does have a lot of historical backings for what they're trying to portray in-game. A less notable trailer was a behind-the-scenes look at the game from the Vancouver branch of Relic Entertainment, so if you want more details and interviews with some employees and behind-the-scenes aspects of the game, check that out for sure. And the last small trailer before the actual gameplay was the naval combat. The video doesn't go into really any detail on how this will work in this game, or what they've changed, what they've added. So it seems the developers aren't quite ready to talk about this, but they wanted to announce it regardless. But if you were looking for naval combat and water combat in this game, you can expect that as well. And the biggest release from the event was an extended look at gameplay that included gameplay from the new civilizations, plus the other civilizations that were already announced. We get a look at the time periods, which include the Dark Age, the Feudal Age, the Castle Age, and the Imperial Age. It's also known now that 8 civilizations total will be included in the base game, 4 of which have been identified. We also get to see in this gameplay the Mongols move their cities around, which is one of the new aspects they can do, is they can completely pack up and move around the map, but that leads to drawbacks and some advantages. We also get to see units being able to hide in the forest and ambush enemy forces, so they're trying to show off as much as they can while still being secretive, but for fans of the series, it looks like a lot of cool quality of life changes and new things to add. And based off the initial community interaction, I would say the gameplay was received relatively well, but some fans are still cautious about the overall look of the game. It doesn't look like a game that's going to be released in 2021, and the graphics have let some people down. Some other complaints I've seen were about frame drops that were inside the trailer, and a few other gameplay aspects that could still use some polish. It's important to note that a lot of this could be polished out by the time the game is ready to release, so the frame drops and other gameplay aspects. And it should be up to fans' standards in that regard. The only major concern I would say is if you are fundamentally against how the game looks graphics-wise, that's most likely not going to change too much. And I saw a few complaints about the UI, that it's too simple for a game like this, which once again could be a slightly larger change. I assume that this is relatively close to what the final UI could look like, but once again, it's all subject to change and we're just really gonna have to wait and see. And I'll close out by saying a few more details were given in an IGN interview following the Age of Empires event. It's confirmed that the armies will be capped at 200 soldiers, but the campaign will sometimes increase this value. Of the remaining 4 civilizations which have not been discussed, the developer has said the list will include some places outside of Europe and Asia, so expect that as well. What that actually means, we'll just have to wait and see. And for the most part, those are some of the standout details in that IGN article, but as always, it will all be linked down below. And the trailer ends with finally giving fans a release window for this project, which says sometime in fall of 2021. Which means fans who have been waiting for this title for years now don't have too much longer to wait before they actually get this game in their hands. As of now, the game is not set for any console release, which means no for Xbox or PlayStation. The studio has not ruled out bringing the project to consoles eventually, but they have said not at launch and it's not really on their radar right now. So at launch, the game will be for PC only, and the game is already up on Steam and can be added to your wish list. And that is everything we know about Age of Empires 4 and where I'm going to end this video. Make sure to like and share, subscribe for weekly gaming news, and I will see you guys in the next one.